For as long as I can remember, I've been captivated by stories, the way they act as vessels, connecting us across distant epochs and transporting us over vast seas. The written word, it spoke to me in a way that felt inspiring, empowering, and healing. As a young child, the highlight of every single day would inevitably fall at the end for me, when one of my parents would tuck me into bed and read me a story. In primary school, I remember how my friends and I would delight in the books in our classroom and savor in our library lessons. I specifically remember how my best friend and I fell in love with Jane Austen, how on the playground we'd take turns pretending to be the various characters. And this was despite the fact that we were both of Asian background, not English, and that we lived in 21st century Australia and not Regency England. Nonetheless, we felt these deeply sincere connections to these characters and to their stories. Reading immersed us into a world of imagination. It brought adventure to our lives, and it sparked curiosity inside of us in a way that was able to eclipse space, time, and culture. As I progressed through childhood, into adolescence, and now, of course, making my way into the real world, naturally some things have changed. And one thing that's become increasingly evident to me is this stark contrast in the way that we as young adults now perceive the world around us, which is far more pessimistically. Beyond that, I see a change in how we perceive ourselves, which more than ever bears a mark of influence of others. And I'll also note that I see far fewer opportunities that we have or take advantage of to use our imaginations, to channel them through literature, through stories. I see a direct link between this lack of opportunity to use creative and imaginative forces and the tendency for us as we grow up to discard those rose-colored glasses that we wore as children. Those lenses which allowed me to look in the mirror and see something that I genuinely thought was beautiful. In this tech-run 21st century that we inhabit, society so often erects borders around what beauty should look like. We're provided examples of what perfection is, and anything that deviates from this standard is then somehow deemed inadequate. We see this in celebrity culture, through social media and the mass consumerism of advertisements and retouched imagery. It's apparent in the negative vitriol that openly critiques the appearances of public figures and non-public figures alike. It seeps into our everyday lives and can reap deeply harmful consequences. In many situations, I've directly seen how it can affect the way that we perceive our own beauty standards and the ones that society accepts. So as I pondered these observations, seeking out solutions, I came to a surprising conclusion. And this brings me back to my earlier description of how much I adored reading. Because what I came to realize is that when we can embrace that almost childlike love of stories, of words, and books, and by extension, the imagination and curiosity that is able to be ignited, then maybe it is possible to heal something inside of ourselves. More specifically, my belief is that storytelling through reading has the power to heal misconceptions that we hold surrounding beauty. But how can this rather far-fetched idea of mine possibly be achieved? An important question at the crux of this is, why do we read to begin with? What motivates and has always compelled us to revel in the words of others? Some say our species is addicted to stories, and human beings, we are creative storytellers, and we make art and we consume art because that is what we were born to do. Renowned historian and author of *Sapiens*, Yuval Harari, makes the claim that 17 millennium ago, our species underwent a cognitive revolution. And in conjunction came the development of complex language structures and the ability to share abstract ideas through storytelling. It allowed us to dominate this planet, for better or for worse. It gave us collective and individual literacy and the profound gift that is reading, which far too often we take for granted. When we can appreciate this immense skill that we're so privileged to possess, it's easier to tap into the healing element which does exist there and find the writings which can sing to us and which can spark change and healing inside of us. I'm sure many of us can agree that there are pieces of writing in this world which can shake us to the core of our being. Words that reshape our beliefs and reorient the way we see the world. They have power. And not every piece of writing that is significant will enact change in the same ways or at the same times for everyone. They won't all present Nobel Prize-winning ideas or be New York Times bestsellers or Booker Prize winners. These traditional quantifiers of success are relatively insignificant here, you see. Rather, there is another common denominator, a denominator that is essential for healing, and that is its ability to inspire and motivate, stimulate, encourage, teach, awaken imagination. When literature can achieve these things, then it has indeed succeeded in galvanizing the undeniably transformative. But still, you might be asking yourselves right now, how does any of this relate to our perception of aesthetics? The concept of aesthetics has been explored through story for eons, and there's a complex relationship there, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about what drew me to realizing that there was an interrelation. As a little girl, I was obsessed with Disney princesses. These optimistic and resilient heroines who could sing and dance and who dazzled across my TV screen, who wore the most exquisite attire I had ever laid eyes on, had these perfectly kind hearts, and were adored by entire kingdoms. It is what I aspired for, and it is who I aspired to be. But superseding any of their other attributes, and even at that very young age, my biggest goal was to one day be as beautiful as them. I remember seeing Pocahontas with her beautiful, shiny hair, and Princess Jasmine, whose waist was somehow the same circumference as her neck. And it was aspirational for me. I mean, honestly, to an extent, it probably still is. But at that time, it didn't come from a place of feeling like I wasn't beautiful. More so, it was that I assumed that as I grew up, that I'd somehow turn into that. So then, when I did enter adolescence, and I came to this distressing realization that I don't look like a cartoon character, it began to affect how I perceived my own beauty, and in fact, whether or not I thought that there was any at all. This subliminal messaging that we get from visual media in particular, it can influence the beauty standards that we believe and that society accepts. Beauty is an integral part of many cultures and societies around the world. It always has been, and it always will be. In China, which is where my mum is from, there's a renowned idiom that was first told to me by my grandmother. It describes these 4 women who are each of such exceptional and rare beauty that their appearances actually cause flora and fauna to wither in their presence. But the key point here is that I was never provided any overt descriptions of their features. So instead, I had to pull from my own imagination as to what that astonishing beauty might have looked like through my eyes. Oscar Wilde famously said that to define is to limit. And this is an important point, because unlike in Disney movies or the other visual media that I consumed, through literature, through words, beauty itself wasn't defined, but rather its impact. And it was characterized into something deeper, something perhaps more meaningful. I was only 5 or 6 years old when I first heard this idiom, and so naturally its deeper meaning wasn't able to sink in until much later. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until I had witnessed firsthand how the negative self-perception of our appearances can be so very debilitating that I could begin to appreciate what underlied the surface of this allegory. I was drawn to the way that it presented beauty as an abstract, one that was open to interpretation, as aesthetics inherently are. And I can only quote Shakespeare himself by affirming that beauty does indeed lie in the eye of the beholder. On that note, last year I read a novel entitled The Secret History, and it's by the redoubtable Donna Tartt, and it had a profound impact on me. The way that the story is constructed is almost reminiscent of a Greek epic, you see, and this forms an important part of the plot, because Tartt makes reference to this postulation that Aristotle had, which is that objects that may be terrifying in our reality can be elevated into something that is beautiful through art. Literature, an art form in and of itself, is able to achieve this. And it can elevate all things which subjectively may be deemed mundane, grotesque, ugly even, into something that is truly magnificent. So when we can take a leaf out of Aristotle's book, out of Donna Tartt's book, out of literature's book, then what we can realize is that beauty need not be defined into rigid standards. Indeed, it is that which makes us unique, that also makes us art, that makes us strange and peculiar and special and alluring. It is that which makes us beautiful. Without perceptual stimuli, literature demands our visualization of descriptions. So where there are gaps in prose, we infuse our own imaginings. And naturally, the text transforms to include a reflection of ourselves. When we employ imagery, it does two things. It allows us to mirror a part of who we are, but it also provides a window into someone else's mind, a doorway into their soul. That is empathy. And it can help us to heal the biases and the judgments which color how we see others, how we see ourselves, and how we see the world. We read to gain a deeper understanding of who we are, but also to find ourselves in someone else's story, to live the poetry we cannot write, and fall in love with characters who we can't see, to appreciate the rich complexities of life and remind ourselves that we are not alone in this world. We live in a cosmos far greater than any one of us can imagine. And in this vast expansive universe that we call home, each one of us is individual, uniquely crafted, carefully authored, by nature, by the hand of God, whatever it is that you believe in 100 billion years, you will never find another. There will never be another you. And so if we can be empowered by the boundless imagination at our disposal, there's a certain freedom to then challenge stereotypes and drive change and find healing, to ultimately remember that we are all artwork. We are all beauty personified.